There's a new chief in town tonight. Today, Mayor Muriel Bowser nominated Peter Newsham as the city's new top cop. He'll need and will probably get D.C. Council's approval. Newsham has been with the MPD for 28 years now, and assistant chief for 14, and he's held the spot as interim chief for the last 5 months. So, Chief Newsham, first of all, thanks for joining us. I know you had an important meeting tonight. Really appreciate it, and congratulations on the new job.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, Chief, got to ask you, you made it a point today to say that community policing is very important to you. Explain for our viewers, what exactly do you mean by community policing?
Well, you know, it's really about continuing to build trust. Our agency is in a very good place in our community, whereas I believe that we are trusted. But it's something we have to continue to work on every single day. So when I talk to my officers about community policing, you know, what I tell them is that in every interaction that we have with anyone at any time, every time we respond to a call, every single day, 24 hours a day, we want to leave that person with the impression that they're dealing with the good guys, and that the only reason that they need to call the police is if they need help, and to let them know that we're there to help. That's a philosophy that I want to instill in each and every one of our police officers. We have really well-meaning, good folks that work for MPD, and I want each and every one to know that we're committed to that philosophy of community policing, to build trust and to be empathetic when people need the police, and then most importantly, when people call the police, that they feel comfortable that when they do call the police, that the good guys are coming and it's MPD.
Chief, I once had another chief say to me that you police differently in different parts of town. Could you address that? What does that mean?
I don't think that's true at all. I think people are people. As you know, Bruce, I've been around this city for a long time. I joined the department in 1989, and I've policed in every single part of this city, and I've developed friends all over this city, and you really don't police any differently. Policing really is about developing relationships with the community that you serve. We have 3 roles in policing. The first one is to prevent crime, and we work every day to do that, and I'm very proud to say that last year we had violent crime numbers were the lowest that they've been since 2009. The second thing that you do in policing, and you don't want to do this too often, but you do have to do it, is you have to arrest folks when they do break the law. And our philosophy is going to be, if we do have to arrest folks, we're going to do it safely and respectfully. And then finally, what we do in policing is we try to make people feel safe. And just the mere presence of a police officer in a neighborhood can make folks feel safe. So I think if we're committed to that as an agency, we're going to continue to be very, very successful.
Yeah, Chief, I really appreciate that. I want to go back to something else you said. We haven't had some of the issues they've had in other major urban areas in the country, but we do have the Black Lives Matter movement here in D.C. Do you see this group as a plus or a negative for police?
I think that it's an important voice that law enforcement has to listen to. And it's not unique to Washington, D.C. The Black Lives Matter group has been across the country in various different scenarios. I have had personal conversations with the leadership of the Black Lives Matter movement here in Washington, D.C. And, you know, their goal, from what it's been articulated to me, is that, you know, the government should never take a human life. And I think that that's a worthy goal. And to the extent that it makes police agencies safer when they're taking folks into custody, that's a good goal that I think that we should all strive for. So we need to listen to that criticism, and we need to make sure that, like I said earlier, when we do have to take people into custody, that we do it safely and we do it respectfully. Yeah,
Chief, you got a lot of support out here. I got to ask you, though, about Pershing Park 2002. A number of people arrested. It eventually cost the government $8 million. Some people are using that to say that perhaps maybe you're not the guy for the job. Are we doing things differently as a result of what happened back in 2002 in Pershing Park?
Yeah, we are, and we've learned a lot from that lesson. You know, back in 2002, when we had demonstrators in the city and they were doing some damage to some property, they gathered in the park. At the time when I made that decision, and you know, Bruce, police officials have to make very, very serious decisions, you know, every single day. When I made that decision, I made a decision that I thought was in the best interest of public safety, and it was in the best interest of Washington, D.C., because I thought if those folks had left the park, there was a potential that there could have been more damage and potentially arrests, and folks could have got hurt. That decision was subsequently decided to be the wrong decision, and I admit that. One of the things that people will know about me is I'm not perfect, and I do make mistakes. And from that, the police department has learned a great deal. And I think if you look at the inauguration that we had a couple of weeks ago, and the way that folks were able to successfully and peacefully come to Washington, D.C. to air their grievances with the government. And then the very next day, we had a women's march where there were hundreds of thousands of people who came to Washington, D.C. and successfully protested. And I've received hundreds of emails and hundreds of letters from people who were participated in that march thanking MPD for the way that we handled that. So if you want to reflect, it was a lesson learned. Pershing Park was a lesson learned. And right now, I think it's safe to say that MPD is the best agency in the country for handling these types of demonstrations.
Chief, I know you got to go, but I got to ask you, what do you need? I mean, you're authorized for how many officers? Do you have enough to do the job?
You know, we're facing challenges. I think everyone's pretty much aware of the retirement bubble. But, you know, there is more to reducing crime in a city than just police. I don't want people to get too focused on the number of police. I think what is a better thing to look at is the effectiveness of the police department right now. Coming off of a year where we had the lowest numbers of violent crime that we've had since 2009, I think that's one measure. I think you want to look at our response times to priority calls and see if we're getting to folks who need help quickly enough. And then I think you have to measure, and this is a tougher measure, is how safe do people feel in our city? Because like I said earlier, sometimes people feel safe just by seeing the police. But I guess it's really important that we're thoughtful when we're making decisions about the size of the police department, that we don't be under the false assumption that hiring police is going to solve all of our crime problems, because it's not. There's a lot more that goes into crime than just having a couple more police on the police department. You got to look at education, you got to look at housing, you got to look at people's ability to get jobs. All of those things can contribute to crime. And I know that the mayor is committed to working on all of those things. So this is, you know, it's a challenge for us to make sure that we bring in really good people to replace the ones that are leaving. It's a challenge to make sure that the people that we do have working here enjoy the work and want to be members of this police department. And I feel like I can accomplish those things on behalf of this city. And I'm very honored that the mayor has asked me to do it. And I look forward to the challenge.
Peter Newsham, still the interim chief. I suppose, you know, you're not the full permanent chief until approved by the council, but most of us are betting on that.
Yeah, hey Bruce, they told me earlier today, now you can call me the acting chief until I'm confirmed. So
got it. Okay. All right. Pete, thanks a lot. Really appreciate your time. Good luck.